This is a longer poem by John Keats. It comes to about 12 pages in my copy. It's not a narrative poem that would have character and plot, but it's more like a personal essay. It's about poetry, especially about Keats's opinion of what poetry can be and should be. The title is Sleep and Poetry. What is more gentle than a wind in summer? What is more soothing than a pretty hummer that stays one moment in an open flower and buzzes cheerily from bower to bower? What is more tranquil than a musk rose blowing in a green island far from all men's knowing? More healthful than the leafiness of dales, more secret than a nest of nightingales? More serene than Cordelia's countenance, more full of visions than a high romance? What but thee, sleep, soft closer of our eyes, low murmurer of tender lullabies, light hoverer around our happy pillows, wreather of poppy buds and weeping willows, silent entangler of a beauty's tresses, most happy listener when the morning blesses thee for enlivening all the cheerful eyes that glance so brightly at the new sunrise. But what is higher beyond thought than thee, fresher than berries of a mountain tree, more strange, more beautiful, more smooth, more regal, than wings of swans, than doves, than dim-seen eagle? What is it? And to what else shall I compare it? It has a glory, and naught else can share it. The thought thereof is awful, sweet, and holy, chasing away all worldliness and folly, coming sometimes like fearful claps of thunder, or the low rumblings earth's regions under, and sometimes like a gentle whispering of all the secrets of some wondrous thing that breathes about us in the vacant air, so that we look around with prying stare, perhaps to see shapes of light, aerial limning, and catch soft floatings from a faint heard hymning, to see the laurel wreath on high suspended that is to crown our name when life is ended. Sometimes it gives a glory to the voice, and from the heart upsprings, rejoice, rejoice, sounds which will reach the framer of all things and die away in ardent mutterings. No one who once the glorious sun has seen, and all the clouds, and felt his bosom clean for his great Maker's presence, but must know what 'tis I mean, and feel his being glow. Therefore no insult will I give his spirit by telling what he sees from native merit. O Poesy, for thee I hold my pen, that am not yet a glorious denizen of thy wide heaven. Should I rather kneel upon some mountain top until I feel a glowing splendor round about me hung, and echo back the voice of thine own tongue? O Poesy, for thee I grasp my pen, that am not yet a glorious denizen of thy wide heaven. Yet to my ardent prayer yield from thy sanctuaries some clear air, smoothed for intoxication by the breath of flowering bays, that I may die a death of luxury, and my young spirit follow the morning sunbeams to the great Apollo like a fresh sacrifice. Or if I can bear the o'erwhelming sweets, 'twill bring me to the fair visions of all places, A bowery nook will be Elysium, an eternal book whence I may copy many a lovely saying about the leaves and flowers, about the playing of nymphs in woods and fountains, and the shade keeping a silence round a sleeping maid, and many a verse from so strange influence that we must ever wonder how and whence it came. Also imaginings will hover round my fireside, and haply there discover vistas of solemn beauty, where I'd wander in happy silence, like the clear meander through its lone vales. And where I found a spot of awfuller shade, or an enchanted grot, or a green hill, or a spread with checkered dress of flowers, and fearful from its loveliness, write on my tablets all that was permitted, all that was for our human senses fitted. Then the events of this wide world I'd seize like a strong giant, and my spirit tease, till at its shoulders it should proudly see wings to find out an immortality. Stop and consider. Life is but a day, a fragile dewdrop on its perilous way from a tree's summit, a poor Indian's sleep while his boat hastens to the monstrous steep of Montmorency. Why so sad a moan? Life is the rose's hope while yet unblown, the reading of an ever-changing tale, the light uplifting of a maiden's veil, a pigeon tumbling in clear summer air, a laughing schoolboy without grief or care, riding the springy branches of an elm. Oh, for 10 years that I may overwhelm myself in poesy, so I may do the deed that my own soul has to itself decreed. Then I will pass the countries that I see in long perspective, and continually taste their pure fountains. First, the realm I'll pass of Flora and old Pan, sleep in the grass, feed upon apples red and strawberries, and choose each pleasure that my fancy sees. Catch the white-handed nymphs in shady places, to woo sweet kisses from averted faces. Play with their fingers, touch their shoulders white into a pretty shrinking with a bite as hard as lips can make it, till agreed a lovely tale of human life will read, and one will teach a tame dove how it best may fan the cool air gently o'er my rest. Another, bending o'er her nimble tread, will set a green robe floating round her head, and still will dance with ever varied ease, smiling upon the flowers and the trees. Another will entice me on and on, through almond blossoms and rich cinnamon, till in the bosom of a leafy world we rest in silence, like two gems upcurled in the recesses of a pearly shell. And can I ever bid these joys farewell? Yes, I must pass them for a nobler life, where I may find the agonies, the strife of human hearts. For lo, I see afar, o'er sailing the blue cragginess, a car and steeds with streamy manes. The charioteer looks out upon the winds with glorious fear. And now the numerous tramplings quiver lightly along a huge cloud's ridge, and now with sprightly wheel downward come they into fresher skies, tipped round with silver from the sun's bright eyes. Still downward with capacious whirl they glide, and now I see them on a green hill's side, in breezy rest among the nodding stalks. The charioteer with wondrous gesture talks to the trees and mountains, and there soon appear shapes of delight of mystery and fear, passing along before a dusky space made by some mighty oaks. As they would chase some ever-fleeting music, on they sweep. Lo, how they murmur, laugh, and smile, and weep, some with upholden hand and mouth severe, some with their faces muffled to the ear between their arms. Some, clear in youthful bloom, go glad and smilingly athwart the gloom. Some looking back, and some with upward gaze. Yes, thousands in 1,000 different ways flit onward. Now a lovely wreath of girls dancing their sleek hair into tangled curls, and now broad wings. Most awfully intent, the driver of those steeds is forward bent, and seems to listen. Oh, that I might know all that he writes with such a hurrying glow. The visions are all fled, the car is fled into the light of heaven, and in their stead a sense of real things comes doubly strong, and, like a muddy stream, would bear along my soul to nothingness. But I will strive against all doubtings, and will keep alive the thought of that same chariot and the strange journey it went. Is there so small a range in the present strength of manhood that the high imagination cannot freely fly as she was wont of old? Prepare her steeds, paw up against the light, and do strange deeds upon the clouds? Has she not shown us all, from the clear space of ether to the small breath of new buds unfolding, from the meaning of Jove's large eyebrow to the tender greening of April meadows? Here her altar shone, e'en in this isle, and who could paragon the fervid choir that lifted up a noise of harmony to where it aye will poise its mighty self of convoluting sound, huge as a planet, and like that roll round eternally around a dizzy void? Aye, in those days the muses were nigh cloyed with honors, nor had any other care than to sing out and soothe their wavy hair. Could all this be forgotten? Yes, a schism nurtured by foppery and barbarism made great Apollo blush for this his land. Men were thought wise who could not understand his glories. With a puling infant's force, they swayed about upon a rocking horse, and thought it Pegasus. Ah, dismal-souled, the winds of heaven blew, the ocean rolled its gathering waves, ye felt it not. The blue bared its eternal bosom, and the dew of summer nights collected still to make the morning precious. Beauty was awake. Why were ye not awake? But ye were dead to things ye knew not of, were closely wed to musty laws lined out with wretched rule and compass vile, so that ye taught a school of dolts to smooth, inlay, and clip, and fit, till, like the certain wands of Jacob's wit, their verses tallied. Easy was the task. 1,000 handicraftsmen wore the mask of poesy, ill-fated, impious race, that blasphemed the bright lyrist to his face, and did not know it. No, they went about, holding a poor decrepit standard out, marked with most flimsy mottos, and in large the name of one Boileau. O ye whose charge it is to hover round our pleasant hills, whose congregated majesty so fills my boundly reverence, that I cannot trace your hallowed names in this unholy place, so near those common folk. Did not their shames affright you? Did our old lamenting Thames delight you? Did ye never cluster round delicious Avon with a mournful sound and weep? Or did ye wholly bid adieu to regions where no more the laurel grew? Or did ye stay to give a welcoming to some lone spirits who could proudly sing their youth away and die? 'Twas even so. But let me think away those times of woe. Now 'tis a fairer season. Ye have breathed rich benedictions o'er us. Ye have wreathed fresh garlands, for sweet music has been heard in many places. Some has been upstirred from out its crystal dwelling in a lake by a swan's ebon bill. From a thick brake, nested and quiet in a valley mild, bubbles a pipe. Fine sounds are floating wild about the earth. Happy are ye and glad. These things are doubtless, yet in truth we've had strange thunders from the potency of song, mingled indeed with what is sweet and strong from majesty. But in clear truth the themes are ugly clubs, the poet's polyphemes disturbing the grand sea. A drainless shower of light is poesy. 'Tis the supreme of power. 'Tis might half slumbering on its own right arm. The very archings of her eyelids charm 1,000 willing agents to obey, and still she governs with the mildest sway. But strength alone, though of the Muses born, is like a fallen angel. Trees uptorn, darkness and worms and shrouds and sepulchres delight it, for it feeds upon the burrs and thorns of life, forgetting the great end of poesy, that it should be a friend to soothe the cares and lift the thoughts of man. Yet I rejoice. A myrtle fairer than e'er grew in Paphos from the bitter weeds lifts its sweet head into the air and feeds a silent space with ever-sprouting green. All tenderest birds there find a pleasant green, creep through the shade with jaunty fluttering, nibble the little cupped flowers and sing. Then let us clear away the choking thorns from round its gentle stem. Let the young fawns, yened in aftertimes when we are flown, find a fresh sward beneath it, overgrown with simple flowers. Let there nothing be more boisterous than a lover's bended knee, not more ungentle than the placid look of one who leans upon a closed book, not more untranquil than the grassy slopes between two hills. All hail, delightful hopes! As she was wont, the imagination into most lovely labyrinths will be gone, and they shall be accounted poet kings who simply tell the most heart-easing things. Oh, may these joys be ripe before I die. Will not some say that I presumptuously have spoken, that from hastening disgrace 'twere better far to hide my foolish face, that whining boyhood should with reverence bow ere the dread thunderbolt could reach me? How? If I do hide myself, it sure shall be in the very fane, the light of poesy. If I do fall, at least I will be laid beneath the silence of a poplar shade, and over me the grass shall be smooth shaven, and there shall be a kind memorial graven. But off, despondence, miserable bane! They should not know thee, who athirst to gain a noble end are thirsty every hour. What though I am not wealthy in the dower of spanning wisdom, though I do not know the shiftings of the mighty winds that blow hither and thither all the changing thoughts of man, though no great ministering reason sorts of the dark mysteries of human souls to clear conceiving, Yet there ever rolls a vast idea before me, and I glean therefrom my liberty. Thence too I've seen the end and aim of poesy. 'Tis clear as anything most true, as that the year is made of the 4 seasons, manifest as a large cross, some old cathedral's crest lifted to the white clouds. Therefore should I be but the essence of deformity, a coward, did my very eyelids wink at speaking out what I have dared to think. Ah, rather let me like a madman run over some precipice. Let thee, hot sun, melt my Daedalian wings, and drive me down convulsed and headlong. Stay, an inward frown of conscience bids me be more calm awhile. An ocean dim, sprinkled with many an isle, spreads awfully before me. How much toil, how many days, what desperate turmoil, ere I can have explored its widenesses. Ah, what a task! Upon my bended knees I could unsay those. No, impossible, impossible. For sweet relief I'll dwell on humbler thoughts, and let this strange essay, begun in gentleness, die so away. E'en now all tumult from my bosom fades, I turn full-hearted to the friendly aids that smooth the path of honor, brotherhood, and friendliness, the nurse of mutual good. The hearty grasp that sends a pleasant sonnet into the brain ere one can think upon it. The silence when some rhymes are coming out, and when there come the very pleasant rout, the message certain to be done tomorrow. 'Tis perhaps as well that it should be, to borrow some precious book from out its snug retreat, to cluster round it when we next shall meet. Scarce can I scribble on, for lovely airs are fluttering round the room like doves in pairs, many delights of that glad day recalling, when first my senses caught their tender falling. And with these airs come forms of elegance, stooping their shoulders o'er a horse's prance, careless and grand, fingers soft and round, parting luxuriant curls, and the swift bound of Bacchus from his chariot, when his eye made Ariadne's cheek look blushingly. Thus I remember all the pleasant flow of words at opening a portfolio. Things such as these are ever harbingers to trains of peaceful images, the stirs of a swan's neck unseen among the rushes, a linnet starting all about the bushes, a butterfly with golden wings broad parted, nestling a rose, convulsed as though it smarted with over-pleasure. Many, many more might I indulge at large in all my store of luxuries. Yet I must not forget sleep, quiet with his poppy coronet. For what there may be worthy in these rhymes I partly owe to him. And thus the chimes of friendly voices had just given place to as sweet a silence, when I again retrace the pleasant day upon a couch at ease. It was a poet's house who keeps the keys of pleasure's temple. Round about were hung the glorious features of the bards who sung in other ages. Cold and sacred busts smiled at each other. Happy he who trusts to clear futurity his darling fame. Then there were fawns and satyrs taking aim at swelling apples with a frisky leap, and reaching fingers mid a luscious heap of vine leaves. Then there rose to view a fane of liny marble, and there too a train of nymphs approaching fairly o'er the sward. One, loveliest, holding her white hand toward the dazzling sunrise. Two sisters, sweet, bending their graceful figures till they meet over the trippings of a little child. And some are hearing eagerly the wild, thrilling liquidity of dewy piping. See, in another picture, nymphs are wiping cherishingly Diana's timorous limbs. A fold of lawny mantle dabbling swims at the bath's edge and keeps a gentle motion with the subsiding crystal, as when ocean heaves calmly its broad swelling smoothness o'er its rocky marge, and balances once more the patient weeds that now, unshent by foam, feel all about their undulating home. Sappho's meek head was there, half smiling down at nothing, just as though the earnest frown of overthinking had that moment gone from off her brow and left her all alone. Great Alfred's, too, with anxious, pitying eyes, as if he always listened to the sighs of the goaded world, and Kosciuszko's, worn by horrid sufferance, mightily forlorn. Petrarch, outstepping from the shady green, starts at the sight of Laura, nor can wean his eyes from her sweet face. Most happy they, for over them was seen a free display of outspread wings, and from between them shone the face of poesy. From off her throne she overlooked things that I scarce could tell. The very sense of where I was might well keep sleep aloof, but more than that there came thought after thought to nourish up the flame within my breast, so that the morning light surprised me even from a sleepless night, and up I rose refreshed and glad and gay, resolving to begin that very day these lines. And howsoever they be done, I leave them as a father does his son. Before I talk about some of my ideas about the poem, I should say these thoughts are all my own. We would probably ask at the beginning of the poem, what does sleep have to do with poetry? We have a statement that basically says sleep is wonderful. It's like all these other wonderful things. The next paragraph is, but poetry is even greater than sleep, even more wonderful. There isn't much else of a link drawn between sleep and poetry throughout the poem. There's a hint about this at the beginning, though. Keats quotes Chaucer at the beginning. I didn't mention it, but it gives us a direction of the link that we look for and find out at the end. The quote is, "As I lay in my bed, sleep full unmeet was unto me. But why that I ne might rest, I ne wist. For there nas earthly wight, as I suppose, had more of hearte's ease than I, for I had nad sickness nor disease." Which basically means he can't sleep, and there doesn't seem to be any reason for it. He's not sick, he's not troubled. In fact, his heart feels very much at ease. What might this have to do with Keats's poem? Only at the end we realize there has been this seemingly autobiographical moment where he had stayed awake all night contemplating art. He's thinking about a day that he spent in his friend's study that is filled with paintings and sculptures and books, and after absorbing all of this for a day, he lies down to go to sleep and can't. He feels so excited, so inspired by what he had seen that day. The result is a refreshment that sleep couldn't possibly offer. This is the tremendous power that great art can have on us, and particularly Keats is writing on the tremendous power that art had on him. There's a great deal in here about poetry itself, about what it's like to write it, about what it's like to read it. It has criticism in it. It talks about movements, past and present, what he agrees with and not. And at one moment towards the beginning, he talks about what it's like to read a great poem. Sometimes it gives a glory to the voice, and from the heart upsprings, rejoice, rejoice, sounds that will reach the framer of all things and die away in ardent mutterings. I think he's talking about how the attributes of poetry all come together. The literary devices, the metaphors, the images, the meter, the rhyme, the theme, how they all come together and strike this chord in the mind and also in the ear that is so beautiful to listen to and so beautiful to contemplate. And he's saying that such sounds, reading such poetry, reaches the framer of all things, a god, right, who seems to be, in Keats' imagination, a framer, an artist like Keats himself. Words that are so sublime, they reach the highest possible. That's the idea. Also towards the beginning, he talks about how poetry has such a pull on him that he wants to dedicate his life to it. He basically says he's aware that he's new to the ranks of the poets that he admires, but he hopes that he'll be able to breathe that same air that his heroes of poetry breathed. And this is how he writes it. He says, "Yet to my ardent prayer yield from thy sanctuary some clear air, smoothed for intoxication by the breath of flowering bays, that I may die a death of luxury, and my young spirit follow the morning sunbeams to the great Apollo like a fresh sacrifice." What a striking image. He dedicates or sacrifices his life on the altar of poetry, and his soul, the offering, rises up to Apollo. Of course, morally, it's not a sacrifice if he loves it, and all other things would be lesser values to him. But if we keep in mind the ancient Greek literal religious sacrifice, then we have the image that he's imagining. One last thing I wanted to mention is this driver or charioteer that he imagines. Possibly this charioteer is Shakespeare, maybe it's Milton, maybe it's Keats' own future self. It's someone who has so much experience with poetry and in life that is able to then handle the affairs of mankind on a much larger scale than lyric poetry can handle, which is what Keats had been writing mostly up to that point. This charioteer is watching all of these people move across like over a stage. And very much like Mozart, he's able to simply take dictation in this flurry of inspiration of what he sees. Keats writes, "Oh, that I might know all that he writes with such a hurrying glow." So Keats can't see what's being written, but he longs to see it. He respects very much and wants to achieve for himself that almost sacred focus of the artist who is in complete control of his means, the artist who's able to work with his inspiration without struggle, or at least with much less struggle than someone who's just starting out. There are so many phrases and images and even individual words that I would love to talk about, but I've got to bring this video to an end. It's already enormous. If you want, write your ideas down in the comments. That would be great to have a collection of ideas about this poem. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed Keats' work as much as I do. Thanks for listening.